समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Hi, and thank you for joining this episode of the Print Security Code. I know viewers and readers like you have come to appreciate the print's granular on ground reportage and the highly researched, detailed analysis we provide. Quality journalism needs the support of readers and viewers like you, though. I urge you, therefore, to consider taking a subscription to the print. You can find details in the link below. To seduce Pakistani generals is a perilous and difficult task. Field Marshal Ayub Khan, one account assures us, was called to a party where 19-year-old showgirl Christine Keeler wasn't wearing any clothes. There is the story, take it for what it's worth, that General Yahya Khan snubbed his key ally, the Shah of Iran, Muhammad Raza Pahlavi, as he was busy in the bedroom. Field Marshal Asim Munir, for his part, has had to be content with a quiet lunch at the White House with goat cheese gâteau and caramelized onions over his rack of lamb. And yet, that meal might add up to very little. Look at the old film of the imperial reception granted to Field Marshal Ayub Khan as he traveled through the United States in 1961. In the following decade, he lost a war and was rejected by his people and forced out of office by his brother officers. The gushing reception President Donald Trump gave to Field Marshal Munir, making him the first Pakistani army chief not holding political office simultaneously to visit the White House, has caused no small anxiety in India. For the first time since 2611, the United States seems to be tilting towards Islamabad, with Trump insisting repeatedly on playing peacemaker on Kashmir. Trump's gargantuan vanity gives the impression that he's just after a Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, he may be seeking to resolve a fracture that has confronted American policy since the birth of India and Pakistan, one that defeated figures like General Dwight Eisenhower and Robert F. Kennedy. The stakes are far higher than ego or even containing Islamic State jihadists in Afghanistan. They go to the heart of America's projection of power in the Middle East. Endless wars, Trump is discovering, will continue to be fought whether or not America continues to maintain the massive military presence that has upheld the global order across the Middle East. Iran is just one of many conflicts that might erupt across the region. To fight these wars of the future, Trump needs allies, partners, and troops. The troops, the cheaper, the better. Following the lessons of the war in Korea in 1950, the United States persuaded itself of the need of partners to secure its access to oil, to the great fields in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran. In February 1951, a meeting of US ambassadors in the Middle East marked out Pakistan as one possible source of troops. Later that month, historian Robert McMahon has written, State Department officials based in South Asia concluded that Pakistan would be willing to commit soldiers to the Middle East, quote unquote, provided the Kashmir question is settled. Through 1951, gushing commentary on Pakistan's military size, its martial traditions, and its pro-Western leanings rapidly spread through the US establishment. That year, newly appointed as Pakistan's military chief, Ayub reached out to Washington asking for discussions on his country's role in the Middle East. America's strategic establishment was keen to listen to Ayub's pitch. I quote, with Pakistan, the Middle East could be defended, George McGee, the Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern, South Asian and African Affairs, told a meeting at the Pentagon that summer. Without Pakistan, I don't see any way to defend the Middle East. General Omar Bradley, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, concurred with this suggestion, suggesting that the US should find means to arm both Pakistan and Turkey so they could help in the Middle East. From America's point of view, this made perfect sense. Pakistani troops were a cheap, readily available way to stabilize a very volatile region. I quote, "Currently, the danger in this area to the security of the free world arises not so much from the threat of direct Soviet military attack as from acute instability, anti-Western nationalism, and Arab-Israeli antagonism," read a paper from the National Security Council approved by President Harry Truman in April 1952. These concerns were adroitly manipulated by Pakistan. In a meeting that July, Ayub's special advisor on defense, Mir Laik, requested $200 million worth of supplies for Pakistan's Air Force and Army, as well as a substantial line of credit. The weapons, he told American Secretary of Defense Robert Lovett, were needed for use not against India, but possible communist aggression, that is, an attack by the Soviet Union. Even though diplomats responsible for engaging with India were less than enthusiastic about these ideas, the proposal to arm Pakistan soon had overwhelming political momentum. Following a visit to Karachi, then Vice President Richard Nixon told the National Security Council that Pakistan was, I quote, "a country he would like to do everything for." The people have less complexes than the Indians. The Pakistanis are completely frank even when it hurts. It will be disastrous if the Pakistani aid bill does not go through, Nixon added. For its part, of course, Pakistan had no actual interest in getting drawn into wars in the Middle East. It had manipulated American anxieties to secure its position against its principal regional rival. The government of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru responded by hardening its position on Kashmir, historian Paul McGurr observes. Talks between Nehru and Pakistan's Prime Minister Muhammad Ali Bogra in 1953, as well as with Ayub Khan in 1959, led nowhere. The Americans put a lot of pressure. India stood up to it. Later, 6 desultory rounds of dialogue took place between 27 December 1962 and 16 May 1963. India declined to make any concessions beyond some minor adjustments on the ceasefire line. For its part, Pakistan persistently demanded that only the Hindu majority parts of Jammu region stay with India. Frustration mounted in Islamabad over this Kashmir deadlock, with pretty dramatic consequences. From the mid-1950s, American aid to Pakistan had played a dramatic role in modernizing its infrastructure and enabling industrialization. The country's annual GDP growth, which was between 4% and 6%, had earned Ayub extravagant praise from economists even like Samuel Huntington. To pressure the US, Ayub Khan now reached out to China, organizing an 8-day red carpet visit for Premier Zhou Enlai in February 1964. From the colonial colonnades of Karachi's Frere Hall Garden, Zhou spoke of China's ancient trading relationship with the Indus Plains and condemned colonialism. Newly elected US President Lyndon Johnson was furious and cancelled an invitation to Ayub Khan to visit the United States after the Field Marshal publicly criticized America's war in Vietnam. From 1964, tensions began to build up over Kashmir. The disappearance of the famous Hazrat Bal relic in December 1963 led to anti-Hindu riots in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. Kolkata's Hindus responded with an anti-Muslim pogrom of their own, which led to hundreds of deaths. The Hazrat Bal crisis also led Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri to extend some emergency provisions of the Indian Constitution, which allowed New Delhi direct rule in Kashmir. Led by Foreign Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Field Marshal Ayub Khan allowed himself to be persuaded that a limited war in India would compel the US and the United Kingdom to intervene. To his mind, it seemed that the Indian army, weakened by the war against China, would be in no position to attack Pakistan in the plains. National Security Council staff member Robert Comer warned his bosses of what was coming. In a 22 October 1963 memorandum, he noted that the Pakistanis appeared to be deliberately building up tensions over Kashmir. "I wonder if we aren't doing ourselves a disservice by our continued pressure on Kashmir," Comer wrote. He was absolutely right. But Islamabad's defeat in the 1965 war marked the coming of a long period of disengagement between the two allies, the United States and Pakistan. Though President Richard Nixon and his Secretary of State Henry Kissinger facilitated arms supplies from third countries like Iran in the 1971 war, the United States proved unwilling to directly intervene, documents show. Following the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, Pakistan proved critical in facilitating flows of jihadists and weapons to fight the Soviet Union. It diminished again after 1989, though, after the Soviet withdrawal. This was a transactional relationship, not a strategic alliance. Like the Afghan war had been for General Zia, 9/11 would prove a gift for another military ruler, General Pervez Musharraf. In 2011, though, President Barack Obama's government sharply reduced aid after the killing of Al Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad. Trump further slashed funds after 2017, compelling Pakistan to turn ever closer to China for support. Islamabad had thus turned itself from a strategic ally of Pakistan with potential equities in the Middle East into a gun for hire to fight American regional conflicts. It wasn't a partner for peacekeeping that the US had imagined it might become back in 1951. That partnership is the relationship Trump's hope he will somehow now be able to resuscitate. America is today the largest oil producer in the world and no longer needs the enormous system of Middle East bases it set up after 1947 for its own energy. Keeping the region's shipping lanes, including the Straits of Hormuz, open to tanker traffic costs the Pentagon on average $50 billion a year, a service that earns us the undying enmity of populations in that region, wrote the scholar Arthur Herman in a superb, perceptive 2014 analysis. Like his predecessors, Trump is holding out the prospect of a deal on Kashmir with some lashing on aid in a bid to persuade Field Marshal Munir to take on the job. Will Trump succeed where his predecessors failed? Free lunches, especially third-rate racks of lamb lacking the least hint of garam masala, ginger, garlic, or exotic women, are only likely to get you so far with a Pakistani field marshal. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.